My name is Daniel, and until that New Year's Eve, I thought my life was solid. Stable job, beautiful wife, two kids who lit up my world. But in a single night, everything I believed in shattered. I've come to lean on a verse from the Bible that says, "The race is not always to the swift, nor the battle to the strong. Time and chance happen to them all." Those words have been my anchor. A reminder that no matter how prepared you think you are, life can break you down in ways you never saw coming. I married Rebecca 3 months after graduation. Back then, I thought we were perfect. She was radiant, 5'6", blonde, with eyes so green they stopped me in my tracks. People noticed her wherever we went. If beauty was a currency, she was rich. Me? I wasn't bad looking, but I wasn't going to be cast in a Hollywood film. Still, she chose me. And for years, I thought that meant something unshakable. We met in college, in a statistics class. Numbers bored her, but she never bored me. We clicked right away, and within months, we were inseparable. After graduation, I landed a solid job with the school district as a financial analyst. That gave us stability, enough to dream, enough to build a future. The only wrinkle early on was her parents. Becca hated acknowledging her background. She was ashamed of her family's poverty. It wasn't until after our engagement that I even met Robert and Dorothy. To me, they were lovely, genuine people. They reminded me of everything I'd lost: my dad when I was 14, my mom when I was 20. Rob and Dot became a kind of surrogate family. It broke my heart that Becca treated them like an embarrassment. As my career grew, so did our life. 3 years in, I passed my CPA exam and became Director of Financial Operations. The pay increase was huge. Becca was thrilled. Bigger house, newer cars, vacations. On the surface, it looked like we had it all. When Becca became pregnant with twins, she wasn't excited at first. She said it was too soon, that she hadn't lived yet. But when Tyler and Hannah were born, something shifted in her. She threw herself into motherhood. For a while, I believed this was our happy ending. She stayed home with them until kindergarten, then pushed to get a job at a law firm. I worried about the change, but her boss was a straight-laced, no-nonsense older man, so I let my fears rest. For years, I told myself we were strong, solid, untouchable. But then came the cracks. In our 6th year of marriage, I noticed the shadows creeping into her mood. She snapped easily, cried often. She said she felt empty, invisible, trapped in a life she hadn't chosen. I suggested therapy, but she lashed out, said she wasn't crazy. I told myself it was just a phase, a storm to ride out. And then came the school district's 4th of July picnic. Oddly enough, that day she came alive again. She laughed, she danced with the kids, she was her old self. I thought maybe we'd weathered the storm. That hope carried me for months, but New Year's Eve destroyed me. She insisted we go to the office party that year. I was surprised. She never liked those gatherings. She said she wanted to dance. I didn't question it. And there he was, Alexander Thornfield. We'd met before. He was a wealthy contractor, slick, arrogant, the kind of man who strutted through life with money as his shield. I never liked him, and now he was at my office party. When the music started, Alex asked Becca to dance, and she said yes. One song turned into 5, then 10. I asked her to dance with me, and she brushed me off. Later, she claimed she was too tired, but when Alex held out his hand, she leapt up as if she'd been waiting all night. Near midnight, I scanned the crowd, looking for her, and I saw it. Saw him pull her close, saw her let him, saw his lips press against hers while everyone counted down. The fury that hit me was like fire in my veins. I stormed over, shoved him away, and told him to back off. The whole room froze. No one dared speak to Alex like that. But I didn't care if he was rich or powerful. He was kissing my wife. I turned to Becca, demanded we leave, and in front of everyone, she ripped her hand from mine and said she was leaving with him. "Just for the night," she said. "We'll talk tomorrow." And then she walked away. I stood there humiliated, broken, with colleagues staring, whispers circling like vultures. I drove home in silence, my mind spinning between rage and despair. New Year's Day, I woke up with bloodshot eyes and a pounding head after a night of whiskey and tears. My thoughts were dark. Revenge filled my mind, ways to destroy Alex. But every plan ended in the same place: jail. And my kids deserve better than that. I picked them up from the sitter, terrified Becca would try to take them first. When they asked where their mom was, I lied. Said she was on a business trip. They accepted it easier than I expected. I took them for pancakes, trying to hold myself together as I scribbled notes on napkins, one list for saving the marriage, another for preparing for divorce. Back home, the answering machine blinked. Becca's voice filled the room. She said we shouldn't talk for a week, that she was helping Alex with a project. Lies. All of it. That's when I crumpled up my reconciliation list and threw it away. Betrayal, it cuts deeper than any knife. It twists everything you thought was real. I understood then why some people lose themselves entirely to grief, why some choose violence, why some choose death. For a flicker of a moment, I thought about it, ending it all. But then I looked at Tyler and Hannah, and I knew, no, they still needed me. That night, a darker fear entered my mind, a thought I couldn't ignore. What if they weren't even mine? The idea gnawed at me until I couldn't breathe. The next day, I quietly collected DNA samples. Days later, I held the results in my hand, my heart pounding. Relief like I'd never known washed over me when I saw it. They were mine. Both of them. My blood. My children. That gave me strength to fight. I called a divorced friend, asked for a lawyer recommendation. He warned me away from his, but insisted I call his ex-wife's attorney. So I did. His name was Sam. And when I told him the story, when I said Alex Thornfield's name, I heard something change in his voice. He told me to come to his office first thing Tuesday morning, to bring the kids, to bring every financial record I could find, bank statements, credit cards, tax returns, everything. That night, I sat at the dining table surrounded by mountains of paper. Each page told the story of a marriage that had once seemed perfect. Each receipt, each tax return, each record of money spent was a piece of the life I thought we had. But as I stacked them neatly into folders, I understood the truth. My marriage wasn't built on love anymore. It was built on lies. And now, it was time to prepare for war. Sam's office was larger than I'd imagined. Polished wood panels, framed degrees, the kind of space that told you the man inside meant business. After introductions, he led me into a spacious conference room. I sat Tyler and Hannah down with their tablets so they could play games, while I tried to keep my own composure across the long table. Twice, while telling Sam the story of how my wife walked out on me on New Year's Eve with a wealthy contractor, I broke down completely. He didn't rush me. He didn't judge me. He just listened, with a patience and compassion I didn't realize I needed that badly. He told me things would get better, but in that moment, I couldn't see a future where they possibly could. When I finished, Sam leaned back and studied me. Then he pulled a photograph from his desk, his sister, Amanda. He explained something that stopped me cold. Before I hired him, I needed to know his history. Amanda had been married to James, Alex's brother. James cheated on her, and during that divorce, Alex had bankrolled a team of ruthless attorneys who crushed Sam in court. Sam had just passed the bar back then, too green to defend his sister against their dirty tactics. She ended up with a terrible settlement. It took him 5 years to get it partially reversed. Even that small victory left Alex seething. Sam's jaw tightened as he relived it. His voice carried weight when he said, "Alex will throw everything at us, but I'll give you my absolute best. I've been waiting for a rematch." That was enough for me. Right there, I told him, "Let's get started." And for the first time since that night, I felt a flicker of hope. We spent 3 hours combing through my documents. Bank records, tax returns, every scrap of financial history. He asked me what I wanted. I told him straight. The house, half our assets, my pension untouched, no alimony, no child support. He gave me a look, half warning, half admiration, and told me I'd need to temper my expectations, but he would fight for it all. Then he asked about custody. Did I want full custody? I shook my head. I told him the truth. While Becca had abandoned me, she still loved those kids. I couldn't see myself ripping them away from their mother. Joint custody felt fair. Sam's expression darkened. He told me bluntly I was at a disadvantage. If Becca married Alex, she could be a stay-at-home mom again. Judges loved arrangements like that. He warned me I'd probably lose primary custody, maybe even be reduced to liberal visitation. And he warned me Alex would fight tooth and nail, even over that. The words hit me like a punch. Here I was, the innocent party, and I stood to lose the most precious thing in my life. Sam didn't sugarcoat it. He said it was unfair, but it was the reality of family court. The one silver lining? If Becca remarried Alex, I wouldn't have to pay child support, though alimony would still be on the table. I told him I didn't care about the money. I'd pay a fortune just to have more time with Tyler and Hannah. At the end of the meeting, Sam spoke with my kids privately. When he came out, there was a rare smile on his face. He said, "You must be one incredible father. They love you, maybe even a little more than their mom." Those words stuck with me. For once, I left feeling armed with something other than despair, though the fear of losing them never left my chest. Sam promised to draft the divorce papers and file for temporary custody. 8 days after New Year's Eve, Becca finally called. She wanted to talk. I arranged for the kids to be elsewhere. I knew what this was, and I wanted no distractions. When she arrived, it was like she'd walked off the cover of a fashion magazine. Perfect hair, perfect dress, a smug glow about her. Just as Sam had predicted, she wanted to rub her new life in my face. I made her wait at the door, ringing the bell again and again before I answered. I didn't say a word, just walked past her into the kitchen and cracked open a beer. She asked about the kids. I almost snapped, but she cut me off, admitting she knew she deserved my anger. Then came the excuses. She said she only left that night to avoid an ugly scene, that Alex had convinced her I needed to cool off, that she'd simply been assisting him on some construction project. And then, with no hesitation, she called him her soulmate. Her soulmate. I let sarcasm drip from my voice. I mocked his money. I mocked her choices. Told her to skip the fairy tales and get to the point about divorce. She bristled at my tone, threatened to leave, but I called her bluff. That got under her skin. She sat back down and handed me an envelope. Inside was a divorce proposal. On the surface, it was generous. Assets split fairly, no surprises, until the last paragraph. That's when my blood boiled. Alex wanted to adopt my children. I nearly lunged at her. I threw the papers back in her face. "You can tell your soulmate," I spat, "that he can shove this proposal exactly where it belongs. No amount of money will ever buy my children." She didn't flinch. She calmly said, "Alex could give them a better life, private schools, travel, everything I couldn't provide." She said he was willing to pay me $100,000 for my consent. I laughed bitterly, called her a sellout, an idiot. She upped it to $250,000, then to $500,000, $500,000 for my kids. She reminded me we were barely making ends meet, and that Alex's contracts with the district could put my job in jeopardy. I told her flat out, even $100 million wouldn't be enough. My kids weren't for sale. I steadied myself, reminded myself of Sam's advice: stay calm, stick to the plan. I looked her dead in the eyes and told her the truth. For the past year, she'd been a terrible wife and a worse mother. That our finances weren't strained, it was her obsession with luxury that drained us. That I didn't need Alex's money, and if he so much as sneezed in the direction of my job, I'd file complaints until his empire bled. And then I dropped the final blow, because she abandoned the children. The court had already granted me temporary custody. She erupted, screaming that she never abandoned them, and then the doorbell rang. I smiled. "That's for you," I said. I opened the door to a sheriff's deputy. He confirmed her identity, handed her an envelope, and said the words, "You've been served." I stepped back, arms folded, watching her read the divorce petition and custody papers, watching her face crumble, watching her storm out in tears. And I'll be honest, after everything she had done, it damn good. After she left, I called Sam, told him it was done. She'd been served. He asked if I'd behaved. I admitted it wasn't easy, but I had. I told him about Alex's outrageous attempt to adopt my kids. That part caught him off guard. He admitted he hadn't expected it, but explained the law was on my side. They couldn't strip my rights without proving me an unfit father, and given what he'd already seen, I was far from that. He warned me, though. Alex would fabricate stories, bend truths, do everything to paint me as a villain. I needed to be careful, to have witnesses, to keep my record spotless. The reality hit me again. The pain, the fight ahead. I asked him quietly, almost like a child, "Does it ever get easier?" He didn't hesitate. "Yes," he said. "It does. Look at yourself. You're not as broken now as you were the night she left. There will be good days, bad days. We'll lose some battles, but we'll keep fighting, and we'll find ways to win." That week off work, I did everything Sam advised. I opened new accounts, split the money, enrolled the kids in an after-school program so I could balance work, and and still have my evenings with them. I created new routines, bedtime rules, story time every night. Tyler and Hannah resisted at first, but soon they settled into it. Those evenings with them became my lifeline. Their laughter, their hugs, the way they leaned into me like I was the only safe place in the world. Then one night, Tyler asked softly, "Dad, will Mom ever come back?" I froze. My instinct was to lie to soothe, but I couldn't. I told them the truth, that Mom had found a new man she wanted to live with, and that she wanted him to be their new daddy. Both kids burst into tears. I hated myself instantly for saying it. I rushed to pull them close, telling them no matter what happened, I would always, always be their daddy. That calmed them, though the ache in my chest lingered long after. That Saturday, I took them to their riding lessons at Grace Pemberton's ranch. It had been my idea, something Becca never supported, but the kids loved it. Grace was warm, kind, with a smile that lifted the weight from your shoulders. As the kids rode, Grace walked over and asked where Becca was. I told her the truth. We were divorcing. She frowned, offered sympathy, and I told her the whole story, how I might lose custody, how Alex might even use his influence to ruin my career. Her eyes narrowed. "Alex Thornfield?" When I nodded, she shook her head, disgusted. She told me her own story, how Alex had used lawyers to bully her out of 2 acres of land she owned. Worthless swamp, but he wanted it for a buffer. He'd refused to pay fair value. Took it anyway. The experience left her bitter, scarred, with a deep hatred for the man. Hearing her speak, I realized I wasn't alone in this fight. Alex Thornfield had left wreckage in more lives than just mine. Grace looked me dead in the eye and said she hoped one day someone would bring him down. I told her I hoped so too. Grace looked at me gently and asked, "What will you do if you get fired?" I sighed and told her about my side work as a CPA. I'd been picking up a few small business clients, slowly trying to build something on the side. I was saving every penny, but deep down I knew the truth. If I lost my job at the school district, I'd probably have to sell the house. An apartment would be cheaper, but it would make running a business 10 times harder. Then, in a soft voice, Grace made me an offer I didn't expect. She said if I could do her accounting for the same rate she was paying her current firm, she'd gladly give me her business. I started to protest, but she cut me off, explaining that her current accountants charged a fortune and treated her like an afterthought. She invited me into her office at the ranch, and when I looked over her books, it was clear right away. Her accounting was simple, but her firm was bleeding her dry. I told her, half smiling, that I couldn't in good conscience charge her anything close to their rate. $750 a month for the books, I said, and $2,000 for your federal returns. That's fair. She shook her head, saying she was happy to pay the higher fees, but I refused. I explained that her old firm overcharged her because she was too small for them to care about. She teared up a little, thanked me, and said that saving that much would make a world of difference for the ranch. Then she added, firmly, "And in return, Tyler and Hannah ride for free." When I started to object, she grinned. "That's not a request, Daniel." Landing Grace as a client was a blessing, but the divorce war was only heating up. Every week, Alex and Becca's pictures appeared in the society pages. Smiling, radiant, traveling. Her life looked perfect, while mine was unraveling piece by piece. I felt miserable, angry, and completely powerless to fight back. Then came the day everything changed. It started on a high note. Harvey's Hardware called, wanting me to handle their accounting. I thought maybe, just maybe, things were turning. But by the afternoon, the rug was ripped out from under me. The school district fired me. I wasn't shocked. The office had been tense since the New Year's Eve party. Everyone knew what happened. And with Alex's company holding huge contracts, my fate had been sealed the moment I shoved him. Still, walking out of that office with a box of my things left me hollow. Alex had pulled the strings, and he'd won. Sam immediately started preparing a wrongful termination suit. He warned it would be a long fight. He even sent out a press release that, I later heard, infuriated my old boss. But none of that erased the sting. I was unemployed, and Alex was pulling the levers of my life. As if that wasn't enough, Sam called me again that afternoon. A judge had just granted Becca joint custody. My heart sank. But then Sam explained the details. The kids would stay in our house. Becca had the right to live there too, but she chose not to. Instead, Every evening I had to pick them up from Alex's house after school. That became my nightly nightmare. Ringing his doorbell, watching him and Becca smile at me from the doorway as if to say, "We've taken everything from you." The kids were confused. I was depressed, and every drive home felt like swallowing broken glass. It didn't stop there. Becca's attorney immediately filed motions claiming I was denying her visitation. Lies. Sam fired back, and the judge thankfully ordered the children stay with me for now. But then, almost casually, the judge changed the order. Now the kids would shuttle between our homes every 2 weeks. The first time Becca came to pick them up under that new arrangement, she waited until they were out of earshot. Her eyes darted nervously, but her voice was sharp. She told me not to complicate things, warning me she didn't want Alex to destroy me. She promised me full visitation if I'd just consent to Alex adopting my children. But she made it clear I would never be allowed to interfere in their new life together. I was disgusted. I told her she'd never give me full visitation. She smirked, and as I turned to walk away, she said coldly, "You've been told." I called Sam immediately. He wasn't surprised. He just reminded me of his earlier warning, expect the worst. He asked if I had installed the security cameras yet. I told him the inside ones were up and the outside ones were going in the next day. He sighed with relief, telling me those cameras might very well save me. The weeks the kids spent with Becca tore me apart. I saw photos of them in the society pages with Alex and her, smiling, dressed in new clothes, looking like the perfect family. Each picture was another knife in my chest. It felt like Alex was buying their love right in front of me. Then came the Monday that nearly broke me. The school called. Tyler and Hannah hadn't shown up. My heart dropped. I rang Becca immediately. She answered with a smug tone, telling me she'd transferred them to Riverside Elementary, a better school, near Alex's mansion. I shouted that she couldn't do that without my consent. She laughed. "I already did," then hung up. Sam told me grimly that the judge would probably allow it. Riverside's ratings were higher. And then, the final blow. That Wednesday, Becca's lawyers filed a complaint, accusing me of physically abusing Hannah. My blood boiled. It was a lie. A filthy, calculated lie. An emergency hearing was called, and I was forbidden from seeing my kids until the investigation was complete. I felt sick, angry, helpless. But when we got to court, the judge's tone changed everything. He looked at Becca's lawyer, Mr. Stevens, with fire in his eyes. He said he'd seen this tactic before. He warned there would be severe consequences if Becca was lying. He demanded specifics, times, dates, evidence. Stevens paled. Becca's smug mask cracked. They had nothing, just the claim that the children told their mother. Then Sam stood, calm, ready. He presented our ace in the hole, the surveillance footage. The judge allowed it, despite Stevens' desperate objections. The video proved everything. At the exact times they claimed, nothing happened. The kids were safe. The lie collapsed in on itself. The judge spoke with the kids privately, then returned and dismissed the allegation, calling it a misunderstanding. He warned Becca sharply that next time, he wouldn't be so lenient. I was cleared. But Stevens wasn't finished. He immediately asked the court to rule on the school transfer. And on that, the judge sided with Becca. I dodged a bullet, but lost a major battle. Afterwards, Sam pulled me aside. He didn't mince words. "This ruling virtually guarantees she'll get primary custody," he said. "The only silver lining, you're not in jail, and you'll still get visitation." I clenched my fists, furious, predicting that Alex and Becca would ruin every visit I had. Sam just shook his head, warning me again. Unless I moved into the Riverside district and remarried, the judge's mind was already made up. That Saturday, I drove the kids to Grace's ranch with a heavy heart. I watched them ride while feeling completely defeated. Grace came over, noticed my face, and asked what was wrong. I told her everything, that the lessons might have to stop soon, that the judge had tied custody to conditions I could never meet. She was silent for a moment. Then she shook her head, eyes full of fire. "Your wife," she said, "is a real piece of work." She told me how cold Becca had been toward her lately, acting superior, dripping with arrogance. I managed a sad smile and agreed. We sat in silence for a minute, watching Hannah trot and Tyler try to look fearless. Then Grace straightened like a thought had snapped into place. "Move in with me," she said softly. "My house and half my land are in the Riverside district. We can tell everyone we're engaged." I blinked. At first, I almost laughed. Then I pictured the custody form, the school line, the judge's face. The longer I sat with it, the more it sounded possible. I asked if she'd run it by Sam. She nodded. In his office, Sam shot it down immediately. "A fake engagement will get you destroyed," he said. "A court will want a marriage certificate. If they sniff out a lie, you could lose custody entirely." The floor dropped a little under me. But Grace wasn't done. She looked Sam in the eye and said, "Then we do it for real." I said no so fast it tripped over itself. She raised a palm. "Just hear me out." Then she laid it all out like a blueprint. Announce an engagement now. After my divorce, a simple courthouse wedding. I could move into her 3-bedroom house right away. Separate rooms, a den I could use for my accounting business, rent paid to keep it clean. I could sell my house, get into the school district, steady the ship. Sam leaned back, thinking. He didn't toss it out. "It isn't illegal," he said carefully. "But if you do this, you have to do it. Prenup. Clear agreement on household expenses, contributions spelled out, and to avoid a claim of fraud, I'd advise staying married at least 18 months. Grace agreed before he'd finished the sentence. My head spun. I told her it was a lot to ask. She smiled, warm, a little fierce. "Anything that messes with Alex, I'm in." We signed everything Sam drew up, an 18-month marriage, property divided on paper, my rent defined as household expenses in the prenup. The next morning, we applied for the marriage license and waited for the final custody hearing. We kept our plan quiet. Becca and Alex did the opposite, splashing their lavish wedding in the society pages. The day of the hearing, my stomach was in knots. Becca's attorney, Mr. Stevens, opened with a character assassination. Unemployed, unstable, financially drowning. Sam stood and the judge snapped at Stevens to produce evidence or stop. He had none. Then Stevens pivoted. Alex and Becca's impending marriage, their resources, better school, better life, sole custody for them. When it was Sam's turn, he calmly took it apart. He showed my bank statements, my bills paid on time, noted how Alex's pressure cost me my job. Then he put down the ledgers for my new firm, profitable, growing, and dropped the final card. I was engaged to Grace Pemberton, living on her property in the Riverside district, with a courthouse wedding planned as soon as the divorce was final. We were requesting joint custody, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. I glanced over. Becca looked stunned. Alex's jaw went tight and red. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I'd landed a punch. The judge asked to speak with the kids. 20 minutes later, Tyler and Hannah came out, smiling and waving like they'd just finished a school play. The judge cleared his throat. These are never easy decisions. Becca and Alex smiled. My heart dropped. Then he continued. Both parents now lived in the same school district. Both would be married. In the best interests of the children, he said, and considering their wishes, I am granting joint custody, 2 weeks with each parent. I exhaled for the first time all day. In the hall, I hugged the kids until they squeaked. Becca and Alex were ripping into their lawyer. I walked over, kept my face neutral, and asked to confirm pickup in 2 weeks. Alex growled, "This isn't over." I told him I was just trying to avoid a trespassing charge. Becca spat out, 2 p.m., then took a swing at Grace with a vile insult. I said loud enough for the corridor to hear, "Enjoy your sugar daddy." Alex lunged. I stepped back as Becca and Stevens grabbed him, Stevens hissing that assault could cost him custody. Then the kids wrapped around my legs, terrified, shouting for him not to hurt me. Everything stopped on a dime. Becca pasted on a smile for the children, murmured something soothing, and led them away. 2 p.m., I repeated. She didn't look back. 2 Sundays later, I picked them up right on time. No ruling overturned, no emergency motions, just my children, grinning, climbing into my car. They loved living at the ranch, loved Grace's easy laugh, the open sky, the horses. 30 days after the order, we stood in a courthouse, me, Grace, the kids, Sam, and Grace's best friend, and said, "I do." When I kissed her, joy flashed across her face like sunlight. A week later, the society pages were all Becca and Alex, huge flowers, bigger smiles. She looked ecstatic. My kids looked ecstatic too, and I felt a sharp, unfair ache at that. Even their happiness hurt. The weeks crawled. Sam had told me the pain would fade. I didn't believe him. Nights were long, heavy. For 6 months, I chewed on the idea of revenge, sorting through fantasies I knew I'd never act on because I love my kids more than I hate anyone. Every time I opened the paper, there she was, radiant, glowing, buying a whole new life while mine felt secondhand. The kids seemed content with the new rhythm. 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there. They raved about Alex's pool, the game room, the theater with the popcorn machine. I nodded and smiled and died a little inside. About 3 months after the divorce, Becca started working an angle, small digs to the kids about me not spending as much as Alex, little comments meant to sour them against me. When they told me, I felt a heat I hadn't felt since New Year's Eve. Grace was furious. "Sit them down," she said. "Tell them the truth." So I did. I sat them at the kitchen table. "Do you think I'm a bad dad because I don't buy what your mom and Mr. Thornfield buy?" Tyler stared at his hands. "That's what Mom said," he murmured. I breathed once, slow. "Mr. Thornfield is very rich," I said. "That's part of why your mom married him. I can't buy you everything he can. Compared to him, I'm a poor man. What I have to give you is my time and my love. If the presents are more important than that, I won't make you come here anymore." Hannah burst into tears. "I want to be with you," she sobbed. Tyler nodded hard, eyes wet. I pulled them in and held on like the world was trying to pry my fingers loose. I don't know what they told Becca, but the next day she came storming up our porch demanding why the kids were angry at her for picking on their poor daddy. I told her to back off and shut the door. It wasn't my proudest moment, but it was honest. She shifted tactics. She started scheduling special trips during my weeks. Disney World first. The kids begged until I caved. Grace pulled me aside. "Next time, say yes, and switch weeks." So the next time a trip landed on my time, I told the kids, of course, but we'd trade weeks. Becca refused. The kids were furious. With her, not me. Lesson learned. It stayed stressful, but I wasn't alone. Grace was my rock, and Rob and Dot, God bless them, became my fiercest allies. Becca hadn't even invited her own parents to her wedding. She was embarrassed by them. I invited them to a barbecue at the ranch that same day. Over burgers and stories, I learned Rob was a decorated, partially disabled Vietnam veteran. A genuine hero. His own daughter was ashamed of him. Something in me let go then. The last warm piece I'd kept for Becca cooled. Rob started showing me how to ride. He'd grown up on a cattle ranch, and for the first time in months I felt, I don't know, steadier. I started giving the kids experiences instead of things. Ideas I'd stolen from dog-eared parenting books. Grace turned it into magic. Hikes, scavenger hunts, campfire stories, a mini rodeo in the pasture with stick horses and handmade ribbons. Becca tried to sabotage it with an offer of Disneyland on the same weekend. The kids said no. They chose our dusty little rodeo over castles and fireworks. That rodeo became an annual tradition. And somewhere in there, in the smell of dust and hay, in Grace's laugh, in the tight grip of a little hand at twilight, the ache began to loosen. The pain didn't vanish, but it eased enough for me to breathe. I was still standing. My kids were still choosing me, and the life I thought I'd lost, it was different now, but it was ours. That first year after the divorce, Becca never let up. Every week it was something new. Expensive gifts, lavish trips, all designed to win Tyler and Hannah over. I made a choice early. I would never make the kids feel guilty if they chose their mother's money over me. I couldn't compete with Alex's wallet, but I could compete with his heart. Life with Grace was steady, pleasant. The ranch was peaceful, her laugh filled the house, and from her den I grew my accounting business into something real. By the end of the year, Alex finally seemed to accept that I would never, ever let him adopt my children. His interest in them faded. He started taking Becca on international business trips instead. At first, I refused to let the kids go along, terrified of a kidnapping or something worse. Grace calmed me, said the risk was low, and in the end, I agreed. The first anniversary of our divorce slipped by without me even realizing it. It wasn't until Sam called to check in that I noticed we'd also passed the anniversary of my marriage to Grace. And here's the truth. Sam had been right. The pain, the anger, the sharp edges of betrayal, they were gone. I felt guilty for not even marking the day, so I bought Grace flowers and took her out to dinner. She glowed for days. As the 18-month mark of our marriage contract crept closer, Grace grew quieter, troubled. I thought I knew why. I told myself I'd imposed on her long enough. So I started looking for a townhouse in the Riverside district. I didn't want to go. I loved the ranch. I loved our life together, but I figured she'd done her part and I needed to let her be free again. By then, both of our businesses were thriving. I'd helped her expand the ranch into a retreat and summer camp. It was making more money than she'd ever dreamed. My accounting business had grown enough that I had staff, and the wrongful termination suit against the district settled for a big sum. I tucked that money away for a new home and office. The night before our contract expired, I sat her down. I thanked her with everything in me, told her she had saved me when I thought I was going to lose my children, told her I'd found a rental and hoped it was all right if I kept using the den for another month while I moved my office. Her reaction blindsided me. Grace burst into tears and ran to her room. I just sat there, stunned. I knocked, but she didn't answer. That night, lying awake, I turned the past 18 months over in my mind. We'd been married, but never intimate. I cared for her deeply. She was everything Becca wasn't. But out of fear, I'd always kept my distance. Around midnight, the storm hit. A violent thunderstorm, the kind that shakes the walls. Lightning cracked so close the windows rattled, and seconds later my bedroom door opened. Grace slipped inside, whispering that she was terrified of storms and asked if she could stay. I lifted the blanket. She slid in against me, trembling, and I realized she wasn't wearing a thing. She whispered again, terrified of the thunder, and then pleaded, "Be with her, just once, before I left. Even if I didn't love her." That broke something in me, or maybe it healed it, because right then I knew my feelings for her ran deep. They weren't the wild, desperate passion I'd once felt for Becca, but something steadier, truer. That night, I let down the walls I'd been carrying for years. Being with her, really with her, was the last piece of the puzzle. After I admitted the truth, I wasn't sure if it was love, but I knew I never wanted to leave. My feelings had been growing for months. I'd just been too afraid to act. She whispered back that she'd loved me almost from the start. She'd known I still loved Becca then, but the fake marriage had given her hope. When I'd announced I was leaving, it had crushed her. Now she asked for the chance to be my wife, not just on paper, but for real. I kissed her gently and promised her I'd only leave if she threw me out. "This is my home," I told her, "and you are my wife, now and forever." When I woke the next morning, the world looked different. The pain, the bitterness, the loneliness, they were gone. In their place was peace. Becca was nothing to me now. Our once fake marriage had become real, and I finally understood what it meant to start over. We needed a honeymoon. I asked Grace where she wanted to go. She said Montana. Her father had worked on a ranch there in his youth and always told her stories. She wanted to see it for herself, so we went. 2 weeks in wide open country. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. When we got back, the kids were happy to see us, but told us something that broke my heart. Becca and Alex had gone to Europe and left them with a nanny they despised. When Becca came to pick them up, I mentioned it. She snapped that it was none of my business. I told her calmly that I wasn't picking a fight, only offering to take the kids when she traveled. She shot back that the custody agreement was strict and left in a huff. Sam told me to wait. 6 weeks later, it happened again. This time, he filed for a modification. In court, Alex didn't even bother showing up. Becca's lawyer argued to keep the agreement. Sam argued that denying the kids their father when their mother was away made no sense. The judge agreed instantly. Motion granted. I walked out stunned. We'd won. In the hallway, Becca demanded why I was such a pain. I told her I was sick of her attitude and genuinely didn't understand the issue. She wasn't around anyway. She cursed and stormed off. Later, Sam told me what he thought. She hated losing control and feared the kids would love me more than her. I sighed because he was right. 2 years later, Grace and I welcomed a baby girl, Emma. 18 months after that, a boy, Lucas. 5 years flew by. By then, I estimated I had Tyler and Hannah 70, maybe 80% of the time. Becca and Alex were always traveling, always gone. Her parents, Rob and Dot, became family to us. Every weekend they came to the ranch. Becca barely spoke to them, never invited them to her house, but Grace and I embraced them. I grew to respect Rob deeply, a decorated Vietnam vet, strong, humble, a man his daughter was ashamed of, but one I was proud to call family. 8 years after my divorce, cancer took Dot. She spent her final days at our ranch, surrounded by love. We buried her in our small private cemetery, where Rob asked to one day rest beside her. Becca came with Alex to the funeral. She looked uncomfortable, awkward with her father, until he finally pulled her into a hug. Alex shook my hand afterwards, smirk on his lips. During the service, he grumbled behind me until Grace turned, hissed something sharp, and he left in a huff. Later, I asked her what she'd said. With a mischievous smile, she told me he'd been fuming about me sitting in the front row with his wife. She'd pointed out that Rob separated us, then told the high and mighty Mr. Thornfield to shut up because the world didn't revolve around him. We laughed about it that night, but we shouldn't have, because Alex Thornfield was not a man who took disrespect lightly, and deep down I knew we hadn't heard the last of him. 2 weeks later, Alex tried again, another land grab on Grace's ranch. This time he claimed 10 acres, pointing to some clerical error in the property records. His lawyers swooped in, paid what they said were back taxes, and demanded a tax deed. Grace was rattled, but I wasn't. I told her we'd fight, and I was right. The court sided with her. After that, I didn't see Alex for a long while. Becca too. The years rolled forward, and the kids spent more and more time with us. By then, they were with me almost 9 months out of the year. They didn't like being at their mother's house anymore. Alex had grown moody, and Becca was hardly ever there. Then came the bombshell. The newspaper lit up with the headline, "Alex filing for divorce." Turns out, he caught Becca cheating again, this time with Marcus Blackwood, a younger, richer billionaire. Becca was just trading up. Grace and I couldn't help but laugh. Karma had finally circled back. Not long after, she married Marcus, but since he didn't live in the district, Tyler and Hannah lived with Grace and me full-time. Barely a year passed before she divorced him too. The truth was almost comical. Marcus had only married her to spite Alex. She was just collateral damage in someone else's war. The years flew. Tyler survived a car wreck that nearly broke me, and Rob pulled through a mild stroke. I had my own brush with death, a triple bypass, but came out the other side feeling younger than I had in decades. Never once did I consider Becca again. Not as a partner, not as a second chance. Until the night Grace, with fear in her eyes, asked if I'd ever go back to her. I pulled her close, kissed her forehead, and told her plain, why would I ever want damaged goods when I already had perfection? One day, I ran into Alex again. He looked defeated, old. He took my hand weakly and whispered, "You won." I asked him what he meant. He said he truly loved Becca. I nodded and told him she had a way of making you fall, but she could never shake her shame over being born poor. She believed money would always buy happiness. Alex sighed. He understood now, he said. And then he told me he had stage 4 cancer. He wanted to apologize for pursuing my wife, for wrecking my life. He said he'd simply fallen in love and hoped one day I could forgive him. And I realized something in that moment. The hate was gone. I pitied him. I told him if he wanted forgiveness, he already had it. He smiled sadly, thanked me, and walked away. He died 5 months later. Grace and I went to the funeral. The crowd was small. Becca was there. She came at me like fire, accusing me of gloating, of ruining her peace. I snapped back, calling her a hypocrite, crying crocodile tears for a man she'd betrayed for money. I told her Alex had apologized to me, and I forgave him. Then I asked if she had ever apologized to him. I didn't wait for her answer. I took Grace's hand, and we left. On the ride home, silence hung heavy until Grace turned, arched a brow, and asked, "Who peed in your cornflakes this morning?" I broke into laughter, and just like that, the tension cracked apart. Alex's will left most of his wealth to charity, but left Becca $2 million. She bought an apartment near the ranch and tried, half-heartedly, to reconnect with Tyler and Hannah. But they were grown. The bond was gone. She gave up, drifted from man to man, chasing something she never found. Me? I was proud of our kids. Tyler became an engineer, married a wonderful woman, Jennifer. They gave us 2 granddaughters. Hannah became a vet, opened her own practice, and married Michael, a vet too. They had 3 kids of their own. And the grandkids? They practically lived at our ranch. Grace and I loved every minute, and Rob, old Rob, was the hero of their world. Emma, our daughter, became a teacher, married her college sweetheart, Jerry. She's expecting her first child. Lucas married Sarah, an American girl he met in England. They've already given us 3 kids with a 4th on the way. The years blurred, and suddenly Grace and I were celebrating 30 years together. Becca? I'd hardly seen her. The kids would mention short phone calls here and there, but she'd grown isolated, alone. Then one Christmas, I saw her, at the mall, sitting in the food court, staring at nothing. She wasn't the woman I'd married. The beauty had faded, wrinkles, weight, time etched into her face, but it was the loneliness in her eyes that struck me. I walked over, asked if I could sit. She snapped at first, demanded to know what I wanted. I started to retreat, said I was just trying to be kind. Her face softened and she apologized, said she'd been feeling low, said she'd like the company. We talked. She admitted she didn't really Christmas shop anymore. She just mailed checks for the grandkids' college funds. That day, she'd come to the mall just to be around people. Her Christmas plan? An Italian restaurant, then a movie. Alone. I told her no. I told her she was coming to the ranch pack to Christmas with her family, her kids, her grandkids, her father. She resisted, said she'd be a burden. I insisted, told her exactly what time to be there. Grace wasn't happy when I told her. Jealous, uncertain. Rob walked in mid-conversation, and when I said Becca was coming, his eyes lit up like a boy's. Grace saw it too. She said nothing more. On Christmas Day, Becca didn't show. Morning passed. Dinner came and went. Rob's shoulders sagged, but at 5:30, the doorbell rang. Becca stood there, hesitant, admitting she still thought it was a mistake. I told her no, it wasn't. Inside, the grandkids swarmed her. The kids hugged her, and Grace, to my surprise, hugged her too. Dinner was warm. Laughter returned. Watching her and Rob sit side by side, talking and laughing, it was healing. Later that night, after the chaos of kids and toys and noise faded, it was just us, me, Grace, Rob, and Becca. By the fire, tears streamed down Becca's face. When I asked if she was all right, she whispered that she would be. And then she began to talk. She confessed she almost hadn't come. She was afraid it would confirm what she already knew, that she had ruined her life. She admitted she had loved Alex, but she had loved his money and power more. She admitted she'd still love me too, but let him take her away. She told us how she betrayed Alex, how she saw in his eyes the same pain she'd once put in mine. She admitted Marcus had used her to spite Alex. She confessed her string of meaningless relationships, and then she stopped. It was the closest she could come to an apology. We sat in silence, the fire crackling. Then she stood to leave. We urged her to stay. She refused. Rob and I walked her to her car. He hugged her tight, whispered that he loved her. She wept. Then she hugged me, whispered, "Thank you," and drove away into the night. I stood there watching her taillights fade, and the words came back to me, the words that had carried me through it all. The race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, but time and chance happened to them all. Time had indeed been the final judge. Chance had brought me pain, but also love, and in the end, it had led me exactly where I needed to be. Thanks for taking the time to listen. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Drop a comment below. Let me know what you think. Until next time, take care.